Hey YouTube, quick shout out to Rory Mizuno because I didn't think I was that old, but I was reading Ultra League and Jungle Cup this week until they commented and said, hey, it's Great League and Fantasy Cup this week. I'm like, oh, so it is, which is helpful because I really do not like Fantasy Cup. It's a three typing cup, Dragon, Steel, Fairy. It has a lot of steel ground Pokemon, and I'll just go over the rankings just to explain why. And it very really limits the meta. So what we're gonna do is we're still gonna go over the top Pokemon. We're gonna go over top teams, probably with a focus on Great League, but we'll see depending on what you guys want to see. So like I said, it is a 1500 CP league, only Dragon, Steel, Fairy. Steel should jump out at you why it's going to be so dominant. It resists both Dragon and Fairy. And then what you're going to see is there are a bunch of Steel Pokemon who are also ground. So now you have Steel Pokemon that resist two of the three typings, and your secondary typing that is now hitting super effective against the third typing in the meta. So that is why there's so many ground Steel typings in this meta, offset with some other Pokemon that will provide some coverage and others that will just do okay, just general in the meta. So let's go over all these ground Steel Pokemon first. Stunfisk at number 1, Rock Slide got rebuffed. You're less like Mud Slap, which is a little slower on the charge, so a little less reliant on just out slapping your opponent, and more of just having cover that you can kind of spam Rock Slides or do have like a real nuke in an Earthquake to hit super effective there. At the same time, you have Doug Trio at 10 and 11. You have Excadrill at 13 and 16. Both of those Pokemon with Mud Slaps. Again, not surprising when you are a Steel Pokemon resisting to the typings and you're a Mud Slap user that hits super effective against the third typing, you are in a good spot. So double Mud Slap is a team. It'll be the first team I showcase because it is a team that I used very, very successfully to the tune of 11 and 1 last time Fantasy Cup was on. So we will go over that team, but it's not surprising that Ground Steel is going to be very, very strong. So with that in mind, you need to think about how other Pokemon are going to play, but also how they're going to play against that. So Galarian Weezing is one that has same thing, has cover for the two typings. You resist Dragon and you have Sludge for other fairies, while at the same time you are now running with Overheat, which is super effective against Steel. So not surprising that is so highly ranked because you are able to cover all three of those typings. So it's at 2 and 5 there. Corviknight as a flyer. Yes, it is half Steel, so you are still single resisting. You double resist ground, but take super effective on the Steel, so you do single resist ground in general. And with that, a lot of these ground Pokemon have cover moves, so you have like Excadrill and Stunfisk with Rock Slide. You now neutralize that because of your half Steel typing. So it's a nice typing. You have the Sand Attack that hits super effective against the Steel. You resist two of the typings because you're Steel yourself. Payback for coverage, Air Cutter for spam. That's why it's so highly ranked. Turtonator, fire Pokemon. Your fire helps offset your fairy weakness. So the fire dragon is a nice combo there. Incinerate is such just a hard hitting move and overheat. So you have like a hard hitting move to start with plus a nuke in the back. It's just gonna be very strong. Dragon Claw. Dragons are gonna be your biggest issue because you take super effective from like Dragon Breath, but are throwing resisted incinerates against Dragon. So having the Dragon Claw is 100% for coverage for the dragons. Dedenne is gonna be a weird one. There is Corviknights. There is Altarias. There are just pure steals like Jirachi and stuff that you can just pair ball charge away through. But there's also a lot of ground, right? Stunfisk, Trios, and stuff like that, which are going to resist the electric, double resist electric actually, while also hitting super effective against you. So you got to watch out for those, build up around that. Empoleon, you should know what Empoleon is. It's going to be, even though it's going to be weak to ground, you have Hydro Cannon for the grounds. Pretty strong safe swap. Drill Peck is basically going to be for your dragons that resist the Hydro Cannon, but otherwise you're just kind of spamming that Metal Slam Hydro Cannon combo against most of the meta. Steelix, not running with Earthquake, which is kind of surprising. You do have Thunderfang, Psychic Fangs, Crunch, so I understand that being able to just lower the opponent's defense and out Thunderfang them is strong against everything that's like not a dragon or not a ground. Is a pretty strong combo there. Crunch is the other move. It is a little slow to get to the Earthquake, so I understand maybe not wanting to run it, but it is an option if you want to run Earthquake instead of Crunch. Talked about the Mud Slap users, talked about Empoleon. Fortress is one that just offsets the slap weakness ground weakness because you are half bug. So you neutralize that ground weakness. Running with Volt Switch, your Volt Switch is, I think, a better move for Fortress. It's quicker to the charge moves. Sand Tomb, only 12 to get to. Sand Tomb is not a great move, but Rock Tomb, being able to lower your opponent's attack at 16 is pretty strong. Plus Volt Switch is a pretty hard-hitting move. Obviously, ground's going to be the issue. Jirachi, I'm going to talk about team number 2 because there's an old team that had Berserker, which I still think works as a safe swap, but I think Jirachi is actually pretty strong. Confusion got buffed. Plus, you have that Aura Sphere for cover on things that resist confusion, so like the steals. So I think it's going to be a pretty strong Pokemon. Doom Desire, going to do well against the fairies as well. So could be an interesting Pokemon. Sand Slash, you have Ice Punch you have Drill Run for steals. You have Ice Punch for the dragons. Shadow Claw for neutral in most situations, so it should be pretty strong as well. Slash, no thank you. And Registeel, I mean, if you have access to Stunfisk, I don't know why you would use Reggie, but if you don't, Reggie could work. Okay, double Mud Slap users. So this team is one I went 11-1 with. Excadrill is a strong Mud Slap user, and it spams at a decent rate, right? So you Mud Slap, which does a ton of damage, and you have Drill Run, Rock Slide, which covers pretty much everything in the meta, spamming at not a terrible rate at 15 and 12 here. So it should be very, very strong. Doug Trio in the back end, I use the Shadow version. You don't need to use the Shadow version. If you're going to use a Mud Slap user, you might as well just make it count, sort of thing. Galarian Weezing on the front. I would expect some... I don't have a team on this, but I would expect to see some like double flying teams, especially a lot of flyers here. Like Togekiss has access to Aura Sphere, so having like a Togekiss Altaria with like Flamethrower that have access to moves that can hit super effective against these steals, I would not be surprised if this double Mud Slap team is offset by like a double flyer team. Which is crazy to think like, oh yeah, double flyers against double steals. Who do you want? It's like, well, you want the double flyers because of all their cover moves, and Mud Slap just being double resisted on the flyer. So with those flyers, I think that Galarian Weezing plays well because you resist like the dragon, and then you have the overheat nuke, and then Sludge is just a really strong neutral move in general. Another team that I used previously is Empoleon, Berserker, Giratina. You can see Steel Wing on an Empoleon. Obviously, use Metal Sound. That is better now. Berserker was a very, very strong safe swap in this meta before. Shadow Claw hits neutral against pretty much everything. And you had that close combat, which hits super effective against all those steals. And then Trailblaze can boost that Shadow Claw attack. Maybe Jirachi takes the place, because Jirachi, you have that buff confusion and then Aura Sphere combo. So it could potentially play Berserker's role. Giratina, I don't think there's a point of using Giratina now. It was fun when it came out. I think you can probably just use Altaria. There is Turtonator, but that makes you triple weak to ground on this team, which is going to be a theme. A lot of Pokemon in this meta are going to be weak to ground. So maybe Altaria as an option for the Dragon if you want to go down the Dragon route. So let's look at some other teams. I started with Stunfisk. I always start with the number 1 ranked Pokemon just to see how strong they are. And not surprising, Stunfisk is a very strong Pokemon, resisting 2 of the typings, hitting super effective against the other Steel Mud Slap users as well, and have cover for flyers. So not surprising. It's kind of funny that as a Steel Pokemon, your 3 losses are a flyer, a fairy, and a flying fairy. So because we have Sand Attack super effective plus Payback, and then we have Chilling Water here super effective, and then we have Aura Sphere super effective. So try to cover those weaknesses. Cover with Turtonator, just going to out incinerate you and burn you up, all these Steel Pokemon. And then a Azumarill on the back, you don't even need bulk. Like Turtonator or Stunfisk actually carry their own bulk. But I think with the amount of ground in the meta, I think having a Azumarill just with that bubble will do very well. You can run Hydro too if you're seeing a ton of Steel. You may want to run something like Play Rough Hydro. The only offset is that Ice Beam is nice to have for just kind of quick throws, but Azumarill's always been one of those Pokemon where you can kind of run all 3 moves and it could make sense given on your team comp. Corviknight. So Corviknight is a flyer, but it is also steel. So you are end up being single resisting the ground type moves. Obviously, there's the Denes and there's other Pokemon that will cause you some issues. So I was looking at like what can pair with it, and then you'll see a double weakness to ground. That's going to be very common in this meta. There's a lot of Pokemon, and if we go just quickly bring up the rankings, here are all the Pokemon that are weak to ground. Stunfisk as a steel, Weezing as a poison, Turtonator as a fire, Dedenne as an electric, Empoleon as a steel, Steelix as a steel, Dugtrio as a steel, Excadrill as a steel, Jirachi as a steel, Sandslash as a steel, Edgy-Slash, and Registeel. So, not surprising that no matter if you try to pair a bunch of different Pokemon together, you're going to have some weaknesses to ground. And that's why ground is so highly ranked. So, this team is double weak to ground, poison on the Galarian, Weezing, and then Steelix as the steel as well. You got cover. You have overheat on Weezing. So although it is a loss, maybe if their shield's down and you have that overheat, you'll be able to take that matchup and do okay there. Otherwise, the flyer on the front end is one that can kind of deal with that weaknesses that you may see. Dedenne, Togekiss, and Dugtrio. So I start with Dedenne just to be like, okay, it's highly ranked, and I know there's a lot of grounds in the meta which could cause us some problems. But if you look at the rankings outside of the grounds, you are in a pretty good scenario in most matchups. So basically you need to cover your ground weaknesses. So I think I started with Togekiss to cover the ground weakness as the flyer that resists the ground, also having Aura Sphere to hit all those steel ground Pokemon. And then I was also looking for just like a third Pokemon. I'm looking at what's safe, what's strong. And one option that came up was Dugtrio. As a Mud Slap user, you can see how, again, I mentioned how many things on the front page Mud Slap beats. You can see just down the board there, ton of wins. Obviously, all those flyers are the biggest issues, and I think Dedenne as the flyer, as the electric, will deal with most of those weaknesses. So I think Dedenne, Dugtrio cover each other's weakness as well, and then Togekiss can act as a safe swap, especially with the cover that you have on this Pokemon. Speaking of Altaria, I expect there to be some flyers in the meta to deal with all this ground. Altaria is one that is very strong. It is bulky. It's got that Dragon Breath rework. It has Sky Attack for neutral situations, and it more importantly has that Flamethrower to hit super effective against all these steals. Rock, Carbink, and Bastion down there, and Fairy are going to be your biggest issues. So I put in Empoleon for starters as a safe swap, because it will hit super effective with water against all those rock Pokemon, while also resisting the Fairy and hitting super effective with Metal Sound. And then Steelix is another cover that you can have in the back. So Empoleon is my safe swap. Steelix also covers those weaknesses in the back, and just has decent bulk and can kind of Thunder Fang and Psychic Fang your way through a lot of matchups. And finally, team number 7, start with Forges just to see how it plays. There's some steals in here. There's a lot of steals in here and some with steel moves that would hit super effective. You can Chilling Water your way through a lot of these matchups. But wanted some cover, so I started, what did I go first? I forget what I went first, but Stunfisk on here as a safe swap / cover to all these. And then I was like, okay, what am I still missing here? And then I'm like, you know what? Is there a fighter in this meta? Because with so many steals, I feel like a fighter should be strong. Now, unfortunately, one of the fighters is also half steel itself. So you will still take super effective from the ground, and you are double weak to ground in the back. But if you use Stunfisk, draw out a ground, kind of chip as much as you like ground steel, try and chip as much as you can, then maybe get the Chilling Water Forges back on. You can maybe run with Lucario, shields down in the back. So that is some options here. I was dreading this week because I had misread this, and I thought, not only did I think I knew I misread the Jungle Cup, because then I looked at it again. I was like, okay, it's Fantasy Cup in Ultra League, but it's not Fantasy Cup, it's Ultra League. It's Fantasy Cup in Great League. So I was kind of nervous about this week. I was like, oh, this may be the week that I just like take it off, because this meta is so bad. But with Great League, I think we're probably going to focus there. But if you want to submit some battles for this, I maybe cover like 1 or 2 if people want to do that. But with the Open Great League, it's tough. I think a lot of people will probably want to default to that and not be a super limited meta. There is strengths of limited metas, don't get me wrong. The main strength of limited metas is because there's only going to be like 20-ish Pokemon that are relevant, you will quickly learn the matchups and you will know what you're seeing. And so you know, like, okay, I'm running this team. I know its strengths and weaknesses. So that way, like, I have this lead. There's like 20 Pokemon that can come up. I stay in versus all these Pokemon. I leave against these Pokemon and I go to this day swap and play out that matchup. And if I get hit with this and this is the shield scenarios I can take. This is the damage I can take. So there's a lot of strength in limited cups that you can just really understand the matchups. It helps you with counting because you learn the count on all these moves very, very quickly. So I don't just want to totally dismiss limited cups. I just don't enjoy playing limited cups. I find them very RPS and just boring at times. So I'd rather play up in Great League. But if you want to play this cup, let me know in the comments below. And I will maybe cover one or two this week. But that is it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.